put the difference between moral agency and moral worth. So it's less interesting. Yeah, I mean, moral agency requires, you can make certain moral choices, but the question is more who and what is moral worth. Because human beings, there are all sorts of human beings who don't have moral agency, very clearly, but we give them, we can't be having moral worth. So
that's kind of where I was trying to get at. So, and again, yes, I'm asking the monolith in the same way that an undergraduate would ask a graduate. I don't know.
I think you're coming in good faith.
Yeah. Right. I'm not trying to hunt anything down. I'm actually trying to build this.
Yeah.
So, so I'm glad you kind of see that, and I want to kind of follow up that aspect then. If we have moral agency, we have moral agency, and there are things that have moral worth, to include the little pieces of we. What is that aspect? What is it that makes responsibility? What is that dichotomy come from?
Well, my supervisor talks a lot about, and she might this from somewhere else, but responsibility, the ability to respond. And when you ask, what moral agency, who has moral agency, where does that extend to? What comes to my mind is respect. So if you have the ability to respond with respect, then I think that question sort of becomes unimportant. It's not the primary way to focus. Not unimportant in that it's not a question worth asking, but it's maybe just needs to shift slightly and get you sort of in line, I think.
I wanted to go back to the agency question, which then might reshape the morality thing, because I think that it's important to clarify that although some may extend agency to non-human or non-living, or plant or table, or I can't tell you how many times I've used the example of table agent because I do it while I'm teaching, or no, it's like a desk normally, but that it's not like, do we not know if the table can know things or if the table can act, but it's actually like a radical decentering of that kind of decision making, so that my phone is an agent not because it may, and we don't know that it might be trying to do something, but it's an agent because it actually does do something, in that I looked up radical uncertainty, and that produce, after you said that, I was like, I think I know what that means, but before I respond, let me Google it, and that did something in the space, the phone was able to conjure information from the internet through a satellite, which acted as an agent as well, that then produced a response and a change in this room. And so it's a way of thinking about agency differently. So the example I used in my paper about non-human agency was that in a slaughterhouse, it's not just an animal and the human that are potentially acting as agents, but that a knife might be an agent as well, in that it does something, not that it has intention necessarily. Trying to tie that to morality, I think, I don't know, I actually think morality becomes less interesting when you think about that. I don't, I feel morality is still tied to an agency that's intentional. And although, I'm not sure that morality is a useful concept, at least in the way that I understand it. I know that it's used in philosophy in different ways, but morality seems to place judgment on things, of what's right and what's wrong, and trying to come up in some kind of way where, kind of like Elena said, it's for me, morality has been I've understood it as like a binary position where we try to place things. So something that you were talking about earlier with like the idea of love, I've been thinking since the beginning of this panel about Spinoza and the idea of joy, and that he proposes that instead of a morality, we have like an ethics, which I don't know if this is a meaningful differentiation for anybody else, but I think as far as I understood Spinoza, ethics is a more contingent thing in terms of like how you, not whether something is good or bad morally, but that it is, does it impede like someone's or a thing's ability towards joy? Like how does it affect something in a contingent sense? So
then your moral value is fulfilling your potential for joy or not impeding joy. I think maybe it leaves a sort of more of the sort of traditional conception of, say, religious morality.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I think that, because I have sense that when you're using morality, like it's not something I'm opposed to, but I think that often morality is invoked in like a good and evil sense, in like almost like a universal way that is often invoked in animal rights. Like there are universals, and this is like came up in questions on my panel yesterday, our panel, that were kind of like, it would never be okay to kill an animal ever, or I don't know.
I think you can have moral imperatives that also take into context situation. I mean, it's kind of goes back to a lot of feminist knowledge, but maybe you're using agency then in a different way than the question was being asked. But I kind of think I have to say that I would never, and I know what you're talking about, and I didn't see your panel, but I know there's these new ideas that are sort of transhumanist about objects and things, but I don't care if it seems terribly old-fashioned. That's not a reason to make something invalid. But I think that morality is important, and it is something that animal advocates marshal to talk about what we do to non-human animals. And I think it's and again, saying that I didn't see your paper, there's no way I'm going to put objects in the same category as non-human animals or any beings. I just think that's absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that I'm trying to categorize
Yeah.
things. I think I'm talking about like,
it's a relationality that you're speaking of. And I, at least in my understanding. And if you think of agency, you think of I like to think in terms of stories. If you think of the story that is attached to all the things we own. So you talked about your phone. Well, your phone is made out of metals that are mined somewhere, and there's exploitation involved in pretty much everything that we use to some degree, whether it's human, animal, non-human animal, or environmental exploitation. So there is a responsibility to treat the things that we have in our lives with respect regardless of what they are, because somewhere along the line, something was probably damaged, destroyed to produce it. This is unavoidable, though. This is the nature of being in a world that, consumes things.
Well, that's a lot different than
Yeah,
what I was hearing, and that I understand and
Yeah.
agree with.
I mean, also I just want to clarify that it's not to say that we're putting non-human animals on the same scale as a table or a phone, but that actually moving, I mean, the object-oriented, like ontology philosophers, I mean, many of them are ecological and some are like also vegan, ecological advocates or activists, but it's called like a flat ontology, so it's not like turning animals into objects also, but just thinking of everything on like an object level. Another interesting literature, I think, is Elizabeth Gross's work on the cosmology, or the origins of the universe, and the origins of life, that if we continue to not problematize the binary between life and matter, we're failing to acknowledge that there is some